friendly budget in the last 10 years of the Modi government. The big headline is that the basic minimum tax slab has been increased from 7 lakhs by a whopping 5 lakhs to 12 lakh rupees, which is a huge fillip to the middle class. The hope is that this will put money in the pockets of the middle class people. So at the very least, at just above 12 lakh rupees, you will save up to 80,000 rupees per annum. We have a detailed calculation of how much you will save if you're earning 15 lakh rupees a year, or 20 lakh rupees a year, 30 lakh rupees a year. But at the very least, at little over 12 lakh rupees, you will save 80,000 rupees per annum. So what about the big picture? This is for the middle classes, and of course this is also speaking to that concern about consumption slowing down, about the festive season being tepid and so on, therefore putting more money in the hands of the middle class. But what about the big picture? India is right now, and this is what the economic survey's forecast is growing at 6.4% this fiscal. The outlook for the next fiscal is between 6.3 and 6.8, which means we need a huge fillip to get back into that high growth trajectory of 8% plus. Does the budget offer that fillip? We will try and find out from our panel of experts and guests through the course of this special show. But first, I want to bring you up to speed with the big takeaways from Union Budget 2025. Of course, the biggest one is the headline on income tax up to 12 lakh rupees. You also add the standard deduction, which has now been increased from 50,000 to 75,000. So effectively, for up to 12 lakh 75,000 rupees for salaried individuals, you do not have to pay any tax in the new regime. Senior citizens will also enjoy some relief with tax deduction going to 1 lakh from the existing 50,000. The credit limit for farmers has also been raised from 3 lakh rupees to 5 lakh rupees. Farmers, of course, a big vote bank, a big constituency for the ruling party. There was a big focus on MSMEs as well. Loan guarantees have now been expanded to over 5 crore MSMEs. Startups continue to enjoy benefits. The startup fund has now been increased to 10,000 crore rupees with an aim to boost further innovation. The centre has also announced interest-free loans of up to 1.5 lakh crores for state governments. The Jal Jeevan mission to try and provide water to every household, drinking water to every household, has now been expanded up until 2028. Also, there was a fillip on increasing the number of seats, both in IITs as well as in medical colleges. So 10,000 more medical seats have been announced over the next 5 years. And 36 life-saving drugs have been made fully tax exempt. Up to 6 cancer treatment drugs have also been made tax exempt. More than 80 items have been removed from the prerogative of cess or surcharge. I want to first play out the big announcement that the Finance Minister made about increasing the minimum tax slab from 7 to 12 lakhs. That got the biggest applause in her budget speech, which lasted an hour and 15 minutes. And then subsequently also what the Prime Minister said about how this is a people's budget. And then we'll open this up to our panelists.
I am now happy to announce that there will be no income tax payable up to income of 12 lakh rupees. In the new tax regime, I propose to revise tax rate structures as follows. 0 to 4 lakh rupees nil, 4.8 lakh rupees to 4 to 8 lakh rupees 5%, 8 to 12 lakh rupees 10%, 12 to 16 lakh rupees 15%, 16 to 20 lakh rupees 20%, 20 to 24 lakh rupees 25%, and above 24 lakh rupees 30%.
ये बजट सेविंग्स को बढ़ाएगा, इन्वेस्टमेंट को बढ़ाएगा, कंजम्पशन को बढ़ाएगा और ग्रोथ को भी तेजी से बढ़ाएगा। मैं वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण जी और उनकी पूरी टीम को इस जनता जनार्दन का बजट, पीपल्स का बजट, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं।
All right, I want to open this up to our panelists who are joining us. Nilesh Shah is a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council and MD of Kotak Mutual Fund. Sunil Alag, Market Strategist, Managing Director of SKI Advisors. Nalin Mehta here in our studios, Managing Editor with Money Control. Nilesh Shah, let me start with you. So the big headline that we keep talking about is the minimum slab for tax being raised from 7 lakhs to 12 lakhs. Does it adequately address the concern that we've had over the last 3-4 months with FMCG companies like Hindustan Lever, Unilever, etc., saying that there is tepid demand? Will this put enough money in the hands of the middle class in a way that we can kickstart demand again, particularly for lower end goods?
This 1 lakh crore tax rebate given to taxpayers will be a catalyst for consumption boost. It will also require support from monetary policy in terms of higher liquidity as well as lower rates. It will also require support for ease of doing business on ground, as this demand, when it creates higher capacity utilization, investment can easily flow through. So this 1 lakh crore rebate given is the catalyst, but it must be backed by ease of doing business, higher liquidity, and lower interest rates to ensure that there is multiplier effect.
I do want to ask you about that, because that is a point of concern as well. A lot of industrialists, some folks in government also have been sort of pressing the RBI to, decrease the rates. But the RBI has been holding on. Even in the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting that they had, they held on to the rates. Of course, their justification is inflation is still very much outside the bandwidth where they want it to be. What gives, Mr. Shah?
One, this budget has ensured path of fiscal prudence, with fiscal deficit coming below expectation for this year as well as next. More importantly, it has guided for reduction in debt to GDP ratio for next 6 years. Put together, RBI now has more confidence that inflation will remain under control. Okay. And hopefully they will, with lower inflation, get more scope for better liquidity and lower rates.
So let me ask Nalin this. When we were giving our first take after the budget, and you said the markets were not reacting positively, but I think by the end of the session they sort of recovered, ended flat. So the big complaint against the Modi government was you're not giving anything for the middle classes. That seems to have been adequately addressed. But what about on the other end, that there was no big bang reform announcement in the budget? How does one explain why the markets had a very lukewarm response to this budget?
I think there was an expectation of the 1991 kind of reform, so that didn't happen. Around the time the markets were initially rising in the morning, they kind of started becoming flatlining or going a little bit in red. Around the time when the capex discussion happened, actually capex is increased a little bit. It's 11.1, but there's also another component goes to the states. Okay. So actually there is an increase, but the way it was put, it kind of had an impact. What we are seeing is that because, we've had an approach by the Modi government for the last 3 or 4 years of supply side push and impetus to the economy with capex and all of those things. We are now seeing a change of approach with a demand-led strategy. The idea is that if you have 1 lakh crores more now available for consumption in the economy, that's about 10% of the income tax collection last year, right? In the festival season which just ended, the demand was very tepid. The growth was just 3% on price, on volume, and 1 to 2% on price. The idea this should have a multiplier effect. I think in terms of why has there not been the big bang, what about that? To answer your question, in my view, we should see this budget in conjunction with the July budget. The same team has essentially created the budget. That budget was about assuaging disaffected classes of voters that had kind of moved away from the BJP a little bit. That was addressed. The middle class for 2 or 3 years hasn't got anything. There was a genuine grouse by middle class supporters of the BJP. Everybody gets something. Farmers get, every interest group gets something. There are direct benefit transfer, social welfare. So now that has been addressed. I think there is a note of caution from the government. While everybody wanted it to take a big risk and put its cards on the table, the environment right now perhaps is very unstable. We don't know what's going to happen with the Trump, the X factor. So I think what the government's planners seem to be saying is, look, let's be cautious. Let's wait and watch. Let's save our powder for later.
Okay. So, Sunil Alag, if he's there, I'll try and go across to him. I can't see his video, but I hope he's there. Sunil, so one of the unknowns, and I guess we'll go to him in just a moment. Mr. Shah, you want to take that question? One of the unknowns is we don't know how much or to what degree this protectionist impulse, this anti-global trade, anti-globalization impulse in the West, particularly in the US, in some parts of Europe, how it's likely to play out and how India needs to brace itself for it. In fact, the economic survey yesterday, in its outlook for international trade, said the outlook looks cloudy. What do you make of that? And do you see enough having been announced in today's budget to address those concerns?
So undoubtedly, uncertainty over protectionism and tariff continues to linger. But there are multiple ways of managing it. One will be to engage with US and convince them that dealing with India is a win-win situation for them. Imagine if all their software was written by Chinese. Today, they'll be worried about what kind of viruses has come in. Billions of lines of programming has been written in India, and they don't have to worry about bugs, virus, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Today, we provide about 40% of their generic medicines, and we still take just under 10% of their medicine budget. So 40% volume at 10% price, you can't get cheaper than this. The win-win partnership whereby US gets efficiency, cost benefit, and security, and India gets growth can be extended apart from IT and pharma into others.
But those are precisely the goods that he wants to put tariffs on. But anyway, but Naran wanted to make a point.
Looking very closely at what could be at stake with Trump. See, the US is India's second biggest trade partner after China. The trade balance is in our favor. But and India's exports have been rising. But out of the top 10 exports of goods that India puts out, the US is the number one recipient country in 6 of those. And in 30% of those, the US tariffs are zero. So if you imagine if you put 10% on all of those, what impact it will have on our trade balance? There is a lot of stuff to be negotiated here, right? Also, having said that, there is a very large category of products that we trade. The real imbalance is only in a very small percentage of them, if you see the wide category. So we have room to negotiate. If you remember, in the last Trump regime, there was a whole thing about Harley Davidson. Now that's been resolved. But I think the government is looking at this very carefully.
I also feel like he might be using, may not necessarily be the aim of the threat of tariff may not be that he wants to make Indian goods more expensive in the US. It's just that he wants reciprocity. He wants American, bourbon and California
I would say
almonds.
Don't forget the arms trade. I mean, India's arms buying has been really going up, and the Americans are pushing for a lot of those armaments. So a lot of that thinking is actually happening with the NSA and others at the moment.
It may be more that. Sunil Alag is back with us. So Sunil, let's separate these two. Everybody was saying, the middle class certainly was very vocal in saying that, look, we need to get something, give us something. And now they can't complain because, no one expected the minimum tax slab will go from 7 to 12. So yes, there's money being put in the hands of the middle class. The other big picture story is India is growing at 6.4. India cannot afford to grow at 6.4. What did you see in the budget for us to go from 6.4 closer to 8% or above 8%?
You're asking me?
Yes, Sunil, yeah.
Look, okay, fine. And look, I mean, I was off because I couldn't hear you all and you all couldn't hear me. But I'm saying that, look, I think it's definitely a massive move to go from 7 lakh, when you earn 7 lakhs to 12 lakhs. It's a massive, massive move. None of us expected it in the morning, but she's gone and done it. Because the Modi is looking after the poor and the middle class right now. And there is no reason why we should not spend that money that we've got. Because the poor will, whenever you give them money, research has shown that they go out and spend. It's the rich that will save. The very rich might save. But we are a very small percentage of that population that is very, very rich. So therefore, you expect a boost in the economy and you expect people to come down on taxes if the whole of year that works out very well she earns. And the economy, there is absolutely no reason why it should not go from 7 to 7.5 first and then on to 8, 8.5. Not in 1 year, Do not expect it in 1 year. But if the people carry on spending, there is a circle which will start on demand, that is manufacturing, that is providing employment, providing everything. And therefore, there is no reason why it should not go up. Look, and I heard about Trump earlier when when Nalin was talking about Trump. Trump is a guy who will, on separate deals, he'll do deals. He's a deal maker. And therefore, when Modi goes across, who's a friend, therefore he will try and strike a deal with Trump. And he's got 4 years to do it in. And therefore, the juniors will follow, all the other ministers will follow. But he's not going to come back and say, look, I've achieved so-and-so and all, I've done that. Trump will turn around and say, all right, send your youngsters and send all your ministers down to us. Look, as far as I'm concerned, China is one area which is lasting out there because they will reduce prices. Now they've set up manufacturing hub and one man can reduce prices, unlike a democracy where there will be a debate and there will be a number of things which will go on. But one man can do it. So don't think China is going to sit back and not react to our budget and their budget and everything else that is going on. Because to assume that the world will stay on. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, so Dr. Trehan's also now joining us, Chairman of Medanta. Dr. Trehan, on the healthcare front, a couple of things stood out for me. One, of course, the reducing the customs duty on, I think, 36 drugs. A good number of cancer-saving drugs have also, the customs duty has been reduced. I also want your thoughts on this FDI in insurance, which I think will have an impact on health insurance as well, has now gone up from 74 to 100%, provided the premiums are being reinvested back in India. What do you make of the healthcare-specific announcements that were made in today's budget?
So one thing, Zaka, is the fact that this is a continuation of the announcements made in the July budget. One part was that 75,000 medical student seats will be increased over a period of time. And this year, the 10,000 was committed that we could increase it by. That will be a big boost because we are way behind in the number of beds we need for serving our population properly. So that will go a big way. Then the other thing that is important for the paramedical and the technical people who are in the healthcare space, the new centers of excellence for skilling will be a great boost so that our human capital can also develop side by side and create great employment, because every bed created in the health space is going to give employment to 5 to 7 people. So if we are going to add 1 billion beds that we need, or maybe 1.5 billion, we'll have a great opportunity to find employment in the healthcare space. The third thing is that you are right about the duty exemption on drugs, especially cancer, which are expensive imported drugs. And the duty subvention on that will actually be passed on to the patients and reduce the burden on them. Along with that, the creation of one daycare center for cancer in every district is going to help a lot, and 200 are committed for this year. So because today in the rural areas, they have to travel long distance to get their chemotherapy, which sometimes is every week. So there is a huge burden that will be relief to the sick people who have to travel long distance to get their treatment. So I think overall, a lot has been done. The other part is that 1 crore gig workers are included in the safety net, health safety net, which is also a good move. The other part is that AI, which plays a very significant role in healthcare delivery, is also going to benefit from the 500 crores committed for the AI centers developments, right?
But I do want to ask you, Dr. Trehan.
And also, one more thing that came in is the announcement, which is the first time the central government has actually committed itself to promoting Heal in India, which is inward traffic of patients who need very high quality medicine that's available in India at affordable prices. And she also mentioned that along with the private sector, we'd like to boost this opportunity that India has, which is totally not unrealized yet. So that's why I think it will be a big earner for India as far as foreign exchange is concerned also.
I do
So
want
these
to
are the salient features.
one of the things, I know it's slightly outside the remit of the budget. There's been a lot of chatter about this taxation on health insurance, and particularly elderly people, 18% GST and so on health insurance. How much of that chatter have you heard in the last 6 months to a year? Do you see the government in the next GST Council meeting or whenever it is addressing that concern? Because that many are saying is a counterproductive effort. I mean, why would you tax insurance at such a steep
Zaka,
rate?
let me answer two of those questions that you asked. One is that the 100% FDI is most definitely going to boost the insurance sector. That is a very positive move. The second thing is that it is true that we had, when just before GST started, we had as a healthcare sector proposed to the government that the patients should be exempt from GST. That happened for the hospitals, but did not happen for the insurance company. So there is a burden of added 18% on incremental pricing for health insurance. The other part is that the hospitals are paying GST on the inputs. So the input costs do go up, and that is reflected in the cost of healthcare. So we have made a representation to the ministry that this could be aligned and that this relief will help a lot for more and more people to access quality healthcare without busting their budget. So I think these are the moves which will, because it's a GST subject, it will have to take time, and it's also so the states that have to agree to it. But we are actually requesting all the states that this may be done for the benefit of the patient who's already suffering on a high burden of healthcare.
All right, Dr. Trehan, thank you very much for joining us at short notice. That too, thank you for joining us and putting your thoughts into perspective on this budget and what it has for the healthcare sector. I want to go across to Mr. Nangia also, who's joining us. So, Mr. Nangia, you were in the studios earlier in the afternoon, and of course, this thing about increasing the tax slab. Just in terms of sheer numbers, my colleague Aman was telling us this information that out of the 6.33 crore people who paid tax last year, I think it was the year before last, for which we had the data, more than 5 crore were people who were under that 12 lakh slab. So which means you're basically saying that 5 crore will now have to pay zero tax. That is a huge number. That is almost 80-85% of the people who are paying tax. Just what does that mean in terms of a paradigm shift?
I said it in the morning when the budget was coming at the studio also. Let's see the total number of people who are the tax assessee, who pays the taxes actually, who did file a return in 2023-24. 8.09 crores were filed, and almost like close to, you can say that 6.7% of the people have filed the tax returns. So earlier, first of all, there used to be 1 or 2% people paying the taxes. If you see the last year figures, they were close to 6.7% of the people filed their tax return. But if you see the demographic of the income, actually, income till 5 lakhs. Now, the very important thing is that the tax paid was nil. So
yes.
Income till 5 lakhs rupees, 5.25 crores. People didn't pay any taxes, which constitutes 65% of the people have filed a tax return but didn't pay any taxes. It's a very important element. But the moment you travel from 5 to 10 lakhs, actually, the return filed by 1.5 crores. I'm going to get a very good analogy of that. Then you move to the next level from 10 lakhs to 1 crore. There were people, again, 1 crore people filed a tax return. So what has happened? The middle income from 5 to 1 crore, there's a massive spurt. 2 crores people have come. Earlier used to be see people of 5%, 10% people were filing the return in this bracket. And why this has happened? One, there's additional income growing up, people. Income has to be disclosed. You can't run away with anymore with the income be disclosed. There was a lot of other sources of income, shares market, real estate, other source of income which has come up. So there's a massive spurt of income coming up as this bracket is concerned. Now, when you give a relief to the lower people, actually, which is 5.25 crore people, basically, they all go out of the tax net. So what happens now with the change of the figures which have come, till 12 crores rupees, people are not going to file the return.
Okay.
So you'll find actually 65% of the people or 70% of the people will go out of the taxable net. You may get only relief because of 87A relief or something like this, which will help you basically averaging it out. But you find substantial number of people going out of the tax revenue.
All right.
So this is very, and again, you see the relief what has happened. If your income was 25 lakhs rupees, you were paying a taxes of 4.4 lakhs. And in this budget, same 25 lakhs, you pay a tax of 3.3 lakhs rupees. So you save 1 lakh 10,000 rupees if your income is
Straight
25
away,
lakhs.
if your income is above 25 lakhs. I think that's a great point. So the hope is that extra 1 lakh or 80,000 per annum, that is the saving, will then be put back into the economy. It'll be used in consumption. It'll be used to buy food, clothes, fuel, etc. But I want to come back to, one of the critical things, and MSMEs have been arguing about this for a while now. The credit offtake for MSMEs is, again, pretty tepid. Today in the budget, the announcement was made by the Finance Minister to increase the ambit for the MSMEs. I think the figure that she gave is 5.7 crores or something, the number of MSMEs and so on. Do you see the MSMEs now coming in, sort of crowding in, and credit offtake happening in a better way for MSMEs?
There are a number of things sprinkled across the budget for MSMEs. This government, for the last 2 terms now, has certainly focused on MSMEs in a way that is fairly focused. I don't think you can have a major growth spurt without MSMEs kind of coming in. Is what is there enough? I think the jury is still out on that.
Mr. Shah, again, the dichotomy is this, that if gross NPAs for the major banks have fallen, and I think the survey says fallen through to 2.5 or 2.6%, why is that credit not going to these industries, particularly small-scale industries, medium-scale, micro-scale industries, who are potentially looking for credit in their various sectors? How does the government address that concern? Is it because interest rates are high that people are not borrowing? What is the nub of the issue there?
The NPAs have fallen because banks have become conservative on their lending. If they go out and lend through Loan Mela, the NPAs will not be at this level. Number 2, the liquidity has been tight, and obviously that has a direct impact on credit growth. For MSME, the data also is an issue. Many a times, there is not enough data available to assess their credibility, which is where account aggregator will come handy. Finally, the step taken by the government during COVID of providing credit guarantee scheme for MSME did a wonderful job. It allowed banks credit flow to MSME without creating NPA burden. So probably this is an elephant which requires variety of interpretation to manage it. But as we improve data, as we improve liquidity, as we lower rates, I think the credit flow to MSME can increase.
I'll give Sunil the final word.
One of the biggest issues with MSMEs right now, which MSMEs face right now, is issues around GST and compliance. Right? And now that is not addressed in this budget. It's outside the scope of the budget. But eventually you will have to have GST reform and shifts in GST and the burden of compliance, because there are lots of issues in the operations of that which small companies find very difficult to deal with.
I think, Sunil, that's a fair point. I mean, much of the taxation issues, of course, the direct taxes are well within the remit of the budget, which he has now addressed with this whole lifting of the slab. But so many issues around indirect taxes. I mean, shoes under 1,000 rupees are taxed at one rate, shoes above 2,000 rupees are taxed at another rate, cars above 5 lakhs are taxed at or 10 lakhs are taxed at one rate, cars below that are taxed at another rate. I mean, at some point, we have to have common sense, rationalization of these taxes.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, because GST is one area which is all the state finance ministers, whether it's Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, everyone gets together. So they have to be given the money that is promised by the center. And MSMEs become 85% in Germany is MSMEs. Even a Germany, which is a fully controlled nation, has got 85% of MSMEs. So it's important that we don't have so many. Ease of doing business is not a question of you have so many rates in each area, like popcorn and all, which was joked about earlier. But I'm just saying that, look, they have to bring about down to 3 rates only. It doesn't matter whether it's high, whether it's low, but there are only 3 rates that people will stream about, but they will come about and they will understand what this is, what the nation is. But this is what we need to do, because he said, for instance, Mr. Nangia has said that economists, whether the you have to file your nil tax return. Even if it's nil tax,
Yep.
you have to file your return, sir. That's the only difference that I have with you, is that you have to file your nil return.
Okay,
So the
we'll
thing
leave
is
it at that,
expanding.
Sunil. I'm completely out of time, but thank you very much to all our guests. Let's see, at least that complaint about not enough money in the hands of the middle class, that complaint seems to have been taken care of in fair measure, to be fair to the government and to the finance minister. But will this kickstart the virtuous investment cycle? Will this kickstart again the consumption cycle? Earlier in the day, I spoke to Union Commerce and Industry Minister Mr. Piyush Goyal about exactly this. How do we go from a 6.4, 6.5% growth economy back to an 8% growth economy? Let's listen in to excerpts from that conversation. Thank you very much, Piyush ji, for speaking with us. That seems to be the headline, whether it's for the middle class, for the television channels, and I'm sure for the newspapers tomorrow morning. The basic slab being increased from 7 lakhs by a massive 5 lakhs up to 12. Why do you believe this will have a multiplier effect, put more money in the hands of the middle class, and thereby spur consumption, which was rather tepid in the last few months?
Thank you, Zaka. Lovely talking to you. I am extremely delighted that the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Finance Minister have taken this very bold initiative to make the income tax of almost all the middle class totally tax-free. With 12 lakhs or 12.75 lakhs for salary earners, you will find that most of the middle class people will get pretty much relieved of their tax burden. It's a very big relief, and I compliment the Prime Minister for this bold decision, which will not only add to the disposable income of the middle class, which will not only give them the ability to meet their aspirations, take the good things of life which they have been wanting to purchase or which they have been wanting to own, but will also give a great fillip to the national economy. Now imagine with 1 lakh crore rupees extra as disposable income, and a lot of people also will be able to leverage that through EMIs and other schemes. You will be finding a great consumption-led growth impetus to the economy, coupled with the investment that continues to labor on consumption-led growth, and the thrust on manufacturing and exports that you will find in different parts of the budget, whether it's for toys, leather and footwear manufactured goods, whether it's an effort to promote ease of doing business both at the center and states, whether it's the effort to promote tourism. It's a very multi-dimensional, holistic view of the economy which the Prime Minister has taken, and I'm sure this will have a tremendous impact on job creation. It will have a tremendous boost to the national economy.
Piyush, I want you to speak to the concerns around exports and international trade. Survey yesterday saying that the outlook is cloudy, but today the announcements that have been made specifically in leather, in footwear, in toys, etc. How do you think it would mitigate some of the concerns that were highlighted in the survey yesterday?
Well, I'm reminded of that famous dialogue of Atalji's, "Andhera hatega, badal chhatenge, suraj ugega aur kamal khilega." But I was only referring to the badal chhatenge. These kind of clouds have come before our government very often. After all, 2 years of COVID, 2 global wars going on, we've had a series of challenges. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, through his deft handling of the situation, has converted every challenge into an opportunity for the country. And I can assure you, given his wonderful relations with world leaders across continents, given his popularity both in India and internationally, given the fact that world leaders today trust Prime Minister Narendra Modi and India to deliver, we are today experiencing the best time that India could imagine in this turbulent world. Despite all the difficulties, India continues to be the fastest growing economy in the world. This budget continues on the path of fiscal prudence. You have seen our fiscal deficit, instead of 4.9 closing at 4.8 this year. Next year was expected to be 4.5, 4.6. Now it's targeted to be 4.4. Our debt to GDP ratio is falling. Foreign exchange reserves are comfortable. We are in a sweet spot. And with the reduction of several tariffs today, we have signaled that we are going to promote Atmanirbharta, domestic manufacturing, as well as integrate ourselves with the world economy.
The opposition has been saying this was an opportunity for, some big bang reforms. We've been talking about land reform, labor reform, etc. For a number of years now. Divestment, we didn't hear anything in the budget speech about divestment. How would you speak to those concerns?
Well, I think the opposition is unable to understand the meaning of the word reform. This is one of the most reformist budgets that I have seen in a long time. Now, every element of our work, of our economy, is going through a continuous transformation. Now, let us for a moment take the Jan Vishwas bill. We've already come out with one. The second is on the anvil. We have identified 100 items. We are inviting public to give us more ideas. Industry, private sector, both at the center and states. Now we are involving the states in the ease of doing business. We are trying to incentivize them, as Nirmala ji mentioned. We are going to try and work with them to make it like a challenge to attract investment among states. We are working with states to promote tourism. So 1.5 lakh crore has been kept as a 50-year zero-interest grant loan. Now that's as good as a grant. You know that Zaka, after 50 years, when that loan is repaid at zero interest, is almost like, like a grant.
Yeah.
You pay back maybe 1 or 2% on net present value. So with that, we are going to incentivize states to promote 50 new destinations, to provide last mile connectivity, to plug the leakages in their ease of doing business systems. So Prime Minister Modi is using innovative tools to promote well-performing states, to encourage states to compete with each other, to encourage investment through the length and breadth of the country. He wants to see balanced growth. Right from 2014, Prime Minister has focused on the Northeast. He's focused on East India, that they should develop, without which India cannot develop. Right from 2014, he has believed in our youth, in the startup ecosystem, which the Startup India was launched on 16 January 2016. And today is the world's third largest startup ecosystem. We are going to have another 10,000 crores in Fund of Fund number 2. We're going to promote deep tech startups. We're going to promote health startups. It's a multi-dimensional reform initiative. Very difficult for the opposition to understand what wonderful future the country is looking up to under Prime Minister Modi's leadership.
All right, Minister Piyush Goyal, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us here on our budget coverage on CNN News 18. Dr. Tharoor, the middle class is raving about the tax exemption being raised from 7 lakhs to 12 lakhs. The government saying about 80% of taxpayers will be benefited by this. Why does the opposition not buy into it?
Look, first of all, it helps the people who actually have jobs and who have salaries under 12 lakhs. They'll be paying fewer taxes. But it does nothing to address the fact that the large chunk of the middle class doesn't have jobs. As unemployment is rampant. We have the highest youth unemployment in the world at the moment, and even college-educated unemployment is at record levels. The last budget, you may remember, the government announced employment-linked incentive schemes. They simply slashed the budgets that they announced last time from 10,000 crores down to 6,000 and change, and they didn't deliver any of the job opportunities that they promised then. So the problem is that we are looking at a situation where, yes, if you've got jobs, if you're one of the lucky few, you'll be fine. If you don't have a job, the government is not doing enough to get you any. And that's very worrying. So it's great that you have these headlines for the Delhi and Bihar elections, that you've given relief for income tax. But how you're going to actually give a stimulus to the economy, other than for these people to get a little bit of extra money in their pocket, is far from clear. And a lot of the other promises have turned out to be somewhat underwhelming.
But tell me this, one of the criticisms of the Modi government, particularly in the last 6 months or so since the general election last year, has been that the middle class is hurting. The middle class votes for the BJP, but they get nothing in return. Now that concern has been heeded to.
Yes, but that's not the entire middle class. That's there are people still in the middle class who earn more than 12 lakhs. There are people still in the middle class who are still looking for jobs, who've got college degrees and haven't been able to make a decent salary. And at the same time, I am really, really worried as to whether the next week's income tax bill she's mentioned is coming might have some fine print that will even undo the benefit of this. Because we'll have to reevaluate all our strategies once we get the fine print in the income tax bill. For example, will traditional deductions change? Will they become less relevant? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see that. So there's always a little catch with some of these goodies the government likes to dangle before us. So I think we should wait for a week to be entirely sure that even this one is worth celebrating.
Do you reckon, and I think in the last year's speech she had mentioned that we'll eventually move to the new regime and the old regime will be phased out. So things like, interest deductions on home loans, or things like, interest deductions on Provident Fund or other ATC deductions, eventually, the clamor has been for make the tax code simple, make the slabs and the rates simple, and the government seems to be moving in that direction.
Let's hope so. If that comes, that's something we can certainly look forward to, because the more confusing laws are, the less a benefit the ordinary citizen has from them, because you can't figure out what exactly you can benefit from and not. But I'm always worried about the fine print with this government. You remember that this year she's talked about grand ambitions to make India a global hub for toys. And the footwear and leather sector was promised a focused product scheme, big bold words and promises. When you look at the PLI scheme for the last budget, when they actually announced PLIs, and I've got the list in front of me, there were schemes like 6,200 crores for large-scale electronics and IT hardware. You know what they gave toys? 0.01 crore. Footwear and leather sector, 0.01 crore. Suddenly, these are the big-ticket items. God knows what other disappointments await us. I think when the chief economic advisor, no less, writes in the economic survey about the trust deficit, you can see why. Manrega hasn't gone up at all in this entire time, whereas the Rural Development Ministry has a 4,315 crore shortfall for Manrega wages. There are women in my constituency waiting 7 and 8 months to get their dues for work they've already done, and the government continues stuck there. They haven't actually changed even the allocation for this year is lower than 2022-23 spending. So demand is rising. People in the rural areas are desperately looking for work. I think last year was 82.4 million people looking for work. And if you can't give them work, you won't raise the budget, and you'll come up with new grand schemes where you've got no performance record to prove it, as I pointed out with toys and leather. Then I think we've got some real doubts in our minds.
I want one final comment from you. So you're saying it's a damn squib, it misses the big picture. What would have been the one big ticket reform that you would have liked to see in this budget, which you think the government missed out on?
Well, two things. One would have been, of course, something very directly benefiting employment, especially given the flop show of last year's employment-linked incentives. Nothing came there. The second is, give us some hope that the investment climate will change. There was nothing. Investment in our country is stagnant. FDI is pulling out of our country in droves, and on top of that, domestic investment isn't coming in. So the question is, this is a country where $23,000 millionaires migrated last year out of India and became NRIs. What do we do to keep them here and keep them spending their money here and employing Indians?
All right.
Nothing at all. The finance minister didn't mention the word unemployment, didn't give any meaningful signal on investment. And this worries me. These are the two big things that we have to worry about. Already you've got a government that sadly is being rightly criticized for tax terrorism, the weaponization of the tax agencies and the ED and so on. On top of that, if people are fleeing and you're not keeping them here to invest here, I wonder where you're going to get the growth from, without which all of this is a pipe dream.
All right, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining us here on CNN News 18. Mr. Chauhan, let me start with you first. When the budget speech was being made and right after that, the markets were reacting a bit negatively, but I believe now they're also in the positive. What are the big takeaways as far as you're concerned in this budget?
For me, there are three frameworks which this budget has tried to balance. One is the fiscal deficit, which we all watch very carefully. That shows government's resolve to control its expenditure vis-a-vis its income. Budget deficit, the fiscal deficit is now going from 4.9% estimated to 4.8% for the current year, and next year 4.4%. That's I think a great achievement for any government. The second part was keeping more money in the hands of the middle class by giving them tax break up to 12.75 lakh per annum, where you don't have to pay any tax if you are a salaried employee. And that is basically keeping a lot of money in the hands of the families and the individuals. And third is keeping the infrastructure momentum continue. This year, government has not been able to spend as much as they had promised during the last budget, but still they will, I think, go up to 10.2 lakh crore this year, and next year they have capped the target at 11.2 lakh crore. So overall, I think these three components have been well managed, and all three of them are going to increase in some ways together the growth momentum going forward.
Nothing like it if this budget accelerates growth, if it ensures deregulation to a certain extent and, of course, decriminalizes initiative. And safe to say, I think we've achieved all of that, or at least on the path to.
All three, plus more, if I may say, because one big ask was also consumption demand. And how do you boost consumption? And I think the way it has really focused on consumption, the middle class, the lower income bracket, the entire focus on easing of tax returns, so to say, a huge focus on seeing to it how we can generate savings, we can ease the type of the basket that we see in terms of a middle income group or a lower income group expenditure pattern in terms of healthcare and food, etc. Brilliant, actually. And look at the way one has also addressed the supply side in terms of agriculture, which actually addresses a huge issue. I mean, there are a series of things one can talk about agriculture, but cutting that out of what she has done. But I think to come to the point that eases the supply side of it in terms of inflation. So brilliant. And also the way one sees the investment drivers.
Mr. Mujal, what's been the big takeaway for you? Everybody's talking about the 12 lakh for the middle class, so it's certainly a big boost, but that kept aside.
So if I look at this budget, and you can actually break it up into different components, and of course, you said, as you said, the important announcement for individuals for across the country is the big tax break. But it's also interesting that she covered a very wide spectrum, all the way from agriculture to research, to innovation, to deep tech, to clean tech manufacturing, to export support, to MSMEs, to the fund of funds for startups. But if I look at it from industry point of view, there were 3 or 4 very important announcements which came in there. One, of course, is the financial support, the guarantee support for small industry. In addition to that, the increasing the pace of M&A, setting up empowered group to look at all non-financial rules and regulations in the country. We've been talking about this for 20 plus years now. I think this is a very, very welcome step. Somehow it's missed most people's attention. I'm not hearing any noise about this. I think it's critical because so far, for the last 50 years, we've tried to simplify our regulations. We've only tinkered with the regulations, many of them which are over 100 years old, and they have no relevance in today's world. So doing this de novo, I think, is a fantastic move. Of course, we wait to see the direct tax proposal, which will come in the next few days. And from what she said, that also should be a welcome shift because she said they will be simpler, straightforward, easier to understand, easier to implement, and at least half the size of the current act that we have. I also like that we focused on things like nutrition. We focused on things like education, creating more capacity in the technical institutes, creating more capacity in the medical schools. So overall, a fund for a deep tech fund, I think overall as a nation, to help us equip ourselves better in a world which is very nervous. We don't know where it will go. Countries are pulling apart. With the new US administration making announcements of likely tariffs and likely new trade deals, we don't quite know where that is. So all the more reason that our focus on building our own capabilities should get top priority. And I think that's what she's done. The only thing which I found missing compared to the normal budgets was she did not announce a single number for the overall infra spend that the government will do. Of course, it's scattered in many different departments. So one will have to look at the details of the budget. And I haven't yet read the fine print. But overall, I would say a very comprehensive budget, and the lowering of tax should do one more thing which industry has been asking for a while now, is allow and encourage consumption in some manner. So with more liquidity in people's hands, you can do either more saving or more investment or more spend. And each of them actually does good. So as consumption goes up with the higher availability of liquidity, the need to build more capacity, therefore the private capex cycle should kick in, and therefore more job creation.
The biggest takeaway for you, surely there's been a big relief for the middle class, and we're going to see a direct impact of that. But what's been the key takeaway for you?
I think if you look at it, this budget, what FM has done, she has actually connected three dots which we were speaking in the morning. One was the dot of putting money in hands of people through issues of the direct tax, income tax slab. She has already addressed it. That addresses the issue of consumption. The second issue we spoke about in the morning was jobs. And then she is focused on agriculture, which employs 40% of the labor. She's spoken about MSME, which is the largest chunk of manufacturing in terms of employment. And she's also spoken about exports, which has generated massive employment in many parts, especially when you look at things like electronics and those sectors and toy. She's also focused on sectors like textile, toys, which are all employment generated. So I would say this budget is focused on providing relief, improving consumption, which will lead to investment, but also addressing the issues of employment. Now she's foregone revenue, that's clear. Now, to address the foregone revenue, what they've done very well is to say on infrastructure they're going to have public-private partnership. So that gap is being filled through putting together a framework of PPI, which I think is a very smart move. Have the private players come in and participate in the infrastructure where the government has done already heavy lifting. Now, having done this, they've also now opened up new fronts which were not opened up to now, and I think that is really the pathway for future. For example, 100 gigawatts on nuclear. For the first time, they're going to look at civil liabilities issue. It is one of the key levers in our net zero transition. So it lays out a clear roadmap in moving in that direction. They've also fundamentally said that we're going to revamp the way we are actually engaging with, in urban, improving the quality of life in urban centers. 1.5 crore, which has been sort of highlighted for urban cities, never done before. We had various renewal missions, but this one is clearly focused on making that common man is positively sort of affected. And the reason is there is increasingly, you will see the drive of people from rural areas to urban areas. So if you don't focus on our cities, we will be letting that down. So they've started to address that. In all this framework, I think there's also, they've taken care of the state's needs. Many of the schemes which were announced were in partnership with states, so they can locally tune those programs. So clearly, a budget which carries forward on infrastructure through partnership opens clearly, let's say, a front in terms of how do you sort of create multiplying effect for the jobs. At the same time, it's not an incremental change in taxation. It is like a budget which has made a bold move with a promise in a week's time there's going to be unfolding of a complete revamping of the direct taxes. So I think all in all, this budget lays the foundation, as she highlighted, where laws were made many years ago. This is the law for the future as we move towards future. And she has spoken about decriminalization, digitization, and the most important thing, if you look at the entire budget speech, was the word of trust. The trust was spoken at least 10 times in this budget. That highlights the change in the way the government is looking at citizens, that they are partners in progress and we all are in it together and we all are doing it for the development of the country. So I think it's a very, very positive move.
सदस्यगण, बजट के बाद राज्यपाल अभिभाषण में आपको पर्याप्त अवसर दूंगा। मेरा आपसे निवेदन है, नहीं माननीय अखिलेश जी, आपने संसद की मर्यादा को आप बना के रखें। कभी बजट भाषण के अंदर इस तरीके का नहीं हुआ, ये उचित नहीं है, ये उचित नहीं है। अखिलेश जी प्लीज, मैं आपको मौका दूंगा राज्यपाल अभिभाषण पे, प्लीज। नो, ये तरीका ठीक नहीं है। नो, राज्यपाल अभिभाषण पे चर्चा होगी। नो तरीका।
Honorable Speaker, I present the budget for 25-26. This budget continues our government's efforts to A. Accelerate growth, B. Secure inclusive development, C. Invigorate private sector investments, D. Uplift household sentiments, and E. Enhance spending power of India's rising middle class. Together, we embark on a journey to unlock our nation's tremendous potential for greater prosperity and global positioning under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. As we complete the first quarter of the 21st century, continuing geopolitical headwinds suggest lower global economic growth over the medium term. However, our aspiration for a Viksit Bharat inspires us, and the transformative work we have done during our government's first 2 terms guides us to march forward resolutely. Our economy is the fastest growing among all major economies. Our development track record for the past 10 years and structural reforms have drawn global attention. Confidence in India's capability and potential has only grown in this period. We see the next 5 years as a unique opportunity to realize Sabka Vikas, stimulating balanced growth of all regions. The great Telugu poet and playwright Gurujada Apparao had said, Deshamante matti kadoy, Deshamante manushuloy, meaning a country is not just its soil, a country is its people. In line with this, for us, Viksit Bharat encompasses zero poverty, 100% quality good school education, access to high quality, affordable and comprehensive health care, 100% skilled labor with meaningful employment, 70% women in economic activities, and farmers make